The mists of dawn still clung to the Red Fork when Catelyn Stark crossed the damp courtyard of River Run, her cloak sodden at the hem, and her pulse drumming a grim cadence in her ears. Cold dew silver flecked the stone beneath her boots, and the banners of House Tully, silver trout leaping on fields of rippling blue and red, hung limp in the windless hush that precedes catastrophe. All through the night, she had weighed honor against vengeance, duty against the iron necessity of war, and had found no clean choice among them. Yet morning came, as it always did, indifferent to dilemmas of the heart, and with it the certainty that Jaime Lannister, the kingslayer, her son's captor, the golden spark in the tinder of the realm, must die. Inside the great hall, torches sputtered, their flames too weary to banish the pall of gloom. Lords bannermen gathered in uneasy knots, tall Sir Stevern Frey shifting his weight between gout-swollen feet, dour Vance brothers whispering over polished helms, Mage Mormont cradling her scarred hands as though they were cubs. They had ridden hard from every corner of the Trident to answer Robb's summons, expecting counsel, perhaps parole, not this. Near the dais, Lord Edmure stood flanked by tall candles that dripped tears of wax onto the rushes. His eyes, reddened from a sleepless night, flicked toward his sister and away again, as though fearful that the weight of her resolve might crush any final protest from his lips. Jaime knelt at the center of the hall, wrists manacled, silver mail glinting beneath a patched surcoat striped in crimson and gold. Even fettered, he radiated insolent ease, his chin lifted, mouth curved in the faintest approximation of a smile. Catelyn felt that smile like the edge of a blade pressed to her throat. In his green-gold eyes, she saw neither fear nor regret, only curiosity, an aristocratic fascination with the workings of ordinary minds. She thought of Bran's shattered body, of Rickon's restless nights calling for a father who would never return, and the chill in her breast crystallized into something harder than sorrow. A hush rippled outward as she mounted the dais. Robb Stark, her son and king in the north, rose beside her in a shirt of gray ringmail hastily thrown over a doublet embroidered with deerwolves. Youth clung to him still despite a week's worth of stubble, but in his gaze flickered a tempest older than the wall itself. The war had carved a boy's grin from his face and replaced it with a wolf's snarl. His squire fastened the direwolf cloak at his shoulders. The silver and garnet crown of the kings of winter rested beside his goblet like some ancient predator awaiting the scent of blood. When Robb gave Catelyn a nod, she stepped forward. Each beat of her heart seemed to echo from the rafters. "Sir Jaime," she began, voice clear yet husky, "in the name of the gods you forsook and the honor you denied, hear your judgment. By your hand my lord husband is dead. My son lies broken, my daughter stolen, and the realm is drowned in blood. You have offered no contrition, no pledge but mockery. You stand condemned of treason and murder, and of breaking sacred guest right. There can be no ransom for what was lost, no balance to these scales save your life." The kingslayer tilted his head. A lock of gilt hair fell across his brow. "Lady Stark," he said, as though tasting a rare wine, "I confess to many sins, but guest right is not among them. Eddard Stark chose King's Landing of his own accord. Still, if you insist on justice—" He angled his chin toward Robb. "You had best temper it with wisdom. Kill me, and you doom your sisters." Sansa's gentle laugh, Arya's fearless grin, Ned's steady hand upon her shoulder, all flashed before Catelyn in a trembling instant. Yet she had spent the dark hours tallying every promise, every lie, and in the gray light of dawn had found, to her own astonishment, a vein of ruthlessness within her soul. Vows had been broken first by the Lannisters. The old laws lay buried beneath ash and bone. To yield now, to barter honor for hope, would be to kneel to the tyranny of fear. She straightened. If the gods are just, they will shield the innocent. If not, then I shall damn them along with you." Robb's voice thundered through the hall. Edmure Tully, as Lord of Riverrun and Keeper of the Riverlands, pronounced sentence. Edmure's jaw trembled. For a heartbeat, Catelyn feared he would refuse. But memories of Blackfish lectures, and the smoking ruins left by Gregor Clegane, steeled him. He drew his sword, the steel whispering like autumn leaves. "In the king's name," he declared, "and for the red fields of the trident, I condemn Jaime of House Lannister to die. May the gods judge his soul." Silence fell so absolute that the drip of candle wax became thunder. Jaime inclined his head, eyes half-lidded, as though resigning himself to the inevitable boredom of oblivion. "Do try to make it quick," he murmured. Catelyn's hand found Rob's. The bond of mother and son, of queen regent and king, locked in mutual necessity. He squeezed once, hard enough to bruise, before stepping down. The hall's main doors groaned open to admit the morning's wan light. Guards escorted Jaime through the hush. The clang of his chains counted the final seconds of an age. They led the kingslayer to the godswood, to the heart tree whose pale limbs bent low over a black mirror pool, already littered with red leaves. Here, where the old gods listened, sentence would find steel. Jaime knelt between twin ranks of direwolf-cloaked guards. The raven-screened pines whispered overhead. A raven croaked, as though officiating. Robb advanced with ice, greatsword of House Stark, across his shoulders. 2 men bore it. Such was its girth. Forged in Valyria's final furnace, the blade was dark as a frozen night. As Robb paused before Jaime, wolf banners wept dew. "Any last words?" the young king asked. Jaime's smile was small, almost wistful. "Tell Cersei I died with her name on my lips." His gaze drifted toward Catelyn, who watched from beneath a crimson bough. "And tell your daughters they were pawns in a game older than honor." Robb raised ice. The sword shadow fell upon Jaime like eclipse at noon. Catelyn pressed trembling fingers to her throat. Bran had once begged to see a man beheaded. Ned had refused, saying the sight might haunt a boy. Now she watched her firstborn wield ice, and felt something ancient crack inside her chest. The blade fell. A single clean stroke, severing golden head from proud shoulders. Blood fountained scarlet, staining the godswood's roots. Jaime's body slumped forward with an almost graceful collapse, as though bowing to a queen whose name he never learned. The head rolled, hair fanning out like sun-kissed silk until it came to rest at the base of the heart tree. There it stared skyward, mouth parted in that half-smile, as if eternity amused him already. Robb wiped ice upon the grass. "It is done," he said, voice raw. "May it end the war." But wars, Catelyn knew, do not end with single deaths. They merely change shape. The pool at the heart tree's feet grew ripples that spread outward in slow concentric rings, echoes of a decision that would traverse the 7 kingdoms like a bitter wind. Far to the south, in the redstone halls of King's Landing, Cersei Lannister received the raven at dawn. The wax upon the document still gleamed. The Starks had wasted no time. As she read, her nails, lacquered a deep Lannisport crimson, dug crescent moons into her palm. "They murdered my brother. The only man I ever..." The parchment blurred. Beneath the velvet hush of her solar, she felt the city itself lean closer, listening. A single candle toppled as though buffeted by an unseen gale, scattering hot wax across silk carpets. It seared, but she did not flinch. Her father's voice echoed from memory. "A lion does not weep for the prey it devours." Yet the words could not still the trembling in her bones. Jaime had been her mirror, her secret, her strength and weakness entwined. What were 2 halves when sundered? Shattered fragments glinted inside her soul like shards of lion gold. She turned toward Maester Pycelle with a gaze icy enough to freeze wildfire. "Summon Lord Tywin. Summon every bannerman sworn to Casterly Rock. They will ride. They will burn. And when the riverlands are ashes, we shall seed the fields with bones." Pycelle paled. "Your Grace, the small council?" "Damn the council." She hurled the raven scroll. It struck him across the cheek like an accusation. "Fetch my father. Or do you wish to stand between a lioness and her vengeance?" The Grand Maester shuffled backward, quaking beneath his chain. Outside, the first cries of gulls rose over Blackwater Bay, mingling with distant smith hammers. The city roused to another day of petty intrigues, blind to the tempest stirring within the Red Keep. In the Tower of the Hand, Tyrion Lannister studied the same letter with a disquiet that tasted of wormwood. He read each line thrice, tracing the Stark seal, the confident flourish of Edmure's signature, the blunt finality of the sentence. His brother, Jaime, golden, reckless, beloved despite faults enough to fill the narrow sea, now headless beneath a weirwood. Pain flared crystalline, followed swiftly by cold logic. Tyrion set the scroll aside, fingers templed. The game changed. Vengeance would come sure as sunrise, but stupidity killed faster than swords. He must steer the coming storm or drown in Lannister pride. Bronn lounged near the balcony, sharpening a dagger. "Bad news?" "My worst nightmare," Tyrion replied. "A war fought for grief instead of profit." Bronn flicked a metal shard away. "Same as any war then." Tyrion allowed himself a single ragged breath. Jaime had once sworn the day he died, Tyrion would drink a cask of Dornish red in his honor. The thought hollowed him. "Fetch a map," he said. "We must anticipate father's wrath." At Harrenhal, the Raven arrived as Lord Tywin broke fast on oat bread and blood sausage. The old lion read in silence, jaw muscle twitching once, then again. Around him knights fell silent, the clatter of dishes dying like a struck dough. When he set the parchment down, his gaze blazed hotter than the fires that had once melted Harrenhal's towers. "Sir Adam," he addressed his captain of outriders, "send birds to every bannerman from the Red Mountains to the Golden Tooth. Summon them to Riverrun's gates." Sir Adam swallowed. "My lord, the passes are—" "Spare me cautions," Tywin snapped. "We march within the fortnight. Jaime's blood shall not soak the earth unanswered." Kevan Lannister, grayer than last campaign yet still broad-shouldered, laid a hand upon his brother's armored arm. "Revenge is coin well spent, but consider the cost. The Starks hold the neck, the Riverlands burn. To strike now invites attrition." "Nandancho." Tywin's gaze cut like honed steel. "Jaime was more than my son. He was the keystone of the house. Remove the keystone and all else falls to ruin. I will show the North what collapse feels like." In the echoing chamber, the men felt his fury like radiant heat. Ravens flapped from gabled windows, scattering soot. The greatest host the Westerlands had seen since Aegon's landing would soon ride east. News crossed the narrow sea on salted winds. In Bravos, ship's captains spoke in hushed tones of a kingdom unraveling. Merchants adjusted tariffs, wiser than kings. Across the free cities, sellsword companies sharpened blades, smelling gold in distant war. And in Qarth, beneath the shadow of the great Black Pyramid, a silver-haired queen listened to whispered tidings, with growing resolve that dragons alone would not suffice to claim a broken realm. But these currents moved far from River Run, where Catelyn Stark faced quieter reckonings. Night found her in the solar, hands clasped before the hearth. Flames painted her features in amber and rust. She recalled Ned's words the night he rode south. "When you pass judgment, the blood is on your hands as surely as if you swung the sword." She had not swung ice, yet her soul was sticky with crimson nonetheless. Robb entered, face drawn taut. He removed the direwolf cloak and draped it over a chair, suddenly looking smaller without its shadow. "Mother," he said, "did we win or lose this day?" She met his eyes. "Both," she whispered. "We won justice, but we have loosed a beast we cannot leash." Robb sank to his knees beside her. For a brief moment, he was once more the boy whose head she had bathed, whose night terrors she had soothed with stories of Nymeria's voyages and Brandon the Builder. Tears threatened, but she blinked them back. Queens do not weep where soldiers might see. "I fear for Sansa and Arya," he confessed. "And for all our folk when the lion roars. We must meet roar with howl." Catelyn rested a palm upon his cheek. "Your bannermen will march at your word. The Crannogmen guard the neck. Winterfell holds firm. If the Lannisters bring fire, we smother it with snow." Robb managed a faint smile. "Father would have spoken such wisdom." "Your father is still our compass," she said. "His honor guides your crown." Yet, in the hollow of her chest, a voice whispered, "Honor broke today. What remains is survival. Across the twins, Walder Frey received the raven and smirked through parchment-thin lips. The wolf bites, the lion bleeds. He cackled to assembled sons and grandsons. Time to choose sides again, I. His watery eyes gleamed with peculiar delight. War bred weddings, weddings bred alliances, alliances bred coin and titles. The old bridge lord smelled profit thicker than carrion stench. In the dungeons of King's Landing, Sansa Stark clutched a candle stub, knuckles white. Ser Meryn's lair still crawled upon her skin. She knew nothing beyond whispers. A brother executed, a mother turned kingslayer, the queen pacing halls like a starving cat, each rumor more dreadful than the last. Yet hope clung stubbornly as ivy to a crumbling wall. Somewhere Arya roamed free, somewhere Robb marshaled armies, somewhere the North remembered. She knelt and began a prayer to the maiden. Though of late the gods seemed deaf, still the words soothed, weaving a gauze of faith against the claws of terror. Before the last syllable left her lips, trumpets blared outside. Brassy, urgent, dragon's breath wrought into sound. The city stirred to war. Riverwind moaned across the fields of the Westerlands as lords gathered beneath crimson banners. Knights polished helms, sharpened lances, muttered of Lannister vengeance as though it were a living god newly risen. Inside a marbled pavilion lady, Jenna clasped Kevin's hand, praying Tywin's wrath would not devour them all. Her children watched wide-eyed as quartermasters tallied grain. The sky itself seemed to darken, heavy with unspilled blood. At Moat Cailin, Theon Greyjoy, now Robb's ward, yet still a prince of Pike at heart, walked the battlements and weighed the changing world. Greywater Watch sent Frogspear scouts reporting Lannister movements. Theon relayed word north by Raven and marveled at the swiftness with which life pivoted upon a single axe stroke. In his bones he felt the sea's call. Strike, while lions and wolves gnawed each other and the kraken might feast unseen. Ambition unfurled like black sails in a storm. Weeks passed in fevered marches and sharpened plans. Catelyn watched lines of pikemen thread through Riverrun's gates, their banners snapping like dark wings. She spoke with Galbart Glover of supply routes, with Lord Karstark of vengeance for his slain sons, with the Great John who laughed at the notion of defeat. Sleepless nights blurred into dawns of parchment and grit. One rainy evening, Edmure stumbled into her solar cheeks flush with ale and shame. "Sister," he confessed, "each time I close my eyes I see his head fall. I worry the gods will punish us." "Nah." Catelyn poured 2 cups of Riverrun red. "The gods sent war long before we swung ice. We answer war with war." Yet remorse pooled in her belly like spoiled wine. She drank, and the taste was ashes. Far north, beneath Winterfell's watchful towers, Bran Stark dreamt of ravens. Wings beat black against a canvas sky, forming shapes of direwolves and lions entwined in mortal struggle. He woke sweating, the scent of weirwood sap lingering in his nostrils. Old Nan soothed him with stories, but none could quiet the dread that the world itself teetered above some unseen abyss. When the first snows dusted the Red Fork, scouts returned with tidings that Tywin's hust, 60,000 strong, crossed the Tumblestone and camped less than a fortnight's march away. Fires lit the horizon like a necklace of embers. Robb summoned his war council. Catelyn sat beside the Blackfish, watching men argue over lines on parchment. The plan that emerged was bold. Lure the Lannisters across the fords, split their armies with feigned retreats, hammer them piecemeal. Dangerous, but necessity breeds valor. Edmure would command the river defense. Roose Bolton volunteered to hold the center, a cold man with colder eyes, but cunning as any fox. Robb himself would lead the vanguard. Catelyn feared for her son, but pride warred with terror. Kings must ride at the front. Such was the cost of crowns. On the eve of departure, she visited the Godswood. The heart tree's red leaves glimmered in torchlight, each one seeming to weep scarlet tears. She knelt where Jaime had bled, the soil still dark. "Forgive me." She whispered to whatever powers listened. If this was sin, let me pay the price, not my children. Wind rustled branches, carrying no absolution. Battle dawned beneath leaden skies. Trumpets keened, drums pounded, banners whipped in wild arcs. Wolves howled and lions roared. The Green Fork's waters churned with trampled earth and the ash of burned villages. Catelyn rode with the reserves atop a chestnut mare, cloak snapping. From a ridge, she watched columns collide, steel kissing steel, sparks arcing like fallen stars. The sound was monstrous, an ocean of iron and agony. She saw Robb's silver armor flash at the fore, gray wind leaping beside him, a streak of smoke-colored fury. She saw Saradam's cavalry drive hard into Karstark's flank. She saw flight of arrows blot the early sun. And she prayed to any god left that each man's courage would outweigh his fears. Hours stretched into lifetimes. Mud swallowed hoof and boot alike. Blood turned soil to crimson slurry. The shriek of dying horses. The screams of men who would never see home again. These became the music of fate. At last a cry rose above the din. The lion's center had broken. Edmure's river lancers crashed through, cutting supply wagons to kindling. Catelyn tasted hope sharp on her tongue. But hope is fragile. On the western flank Roose Bolton's banner wavered. Men shouted that the Leech Lord fell back, exposing Robb's right. Into that gap Tywin poured fresh reserves, gold-clad knights from the crag, spears from Ashmark, sellsword captains chasing plunder. The lion's tail coiled for a killing strike. Catelyn spurred her mare downslope. "With me!" she shouted, voice hoarse. House Tully's riders formed around her. River trout painted upon shields now streaked with gore. They thundered into the breach, seeking to buy her son a heartbeat more. Swords rang. A Westerling knight tried to drag her from the saddle. She stabbed him through the visor, felt hot arterial spray across her glove. Another charged, and she pivoted, letting his momentum carry him past, before slashing his mount's hamstring. She fought with the desperation of a mother wolf defending her last cub, and for a while the tide held. But the tide is a merciless master. When gray winds howl, rose shrill with pain, Catelyn's heart cracked. She glimpsed the dire wolf, flank pierced by a spear, snapping wildly as archers drew to finish. Robb knelt beside his companion, defending with sword strokes born of panic. Too far to reach. Too late. Then suddenly the trumpets of House Arryn blared from the east. Knights of the Vale descended the hillside, bright wings emblazoned on lances. At their head rode Sir Brynden Tully, the Blackfish, having secured a secret pact with young Lord Robert's regents. Steel met steel, and the Lannister flank buckled. Battle dissolved into rout. Tywin's banner vanished amid dust and chaos. Wolves and trout chased fleeing lions across churned fields. By dusk the Green Fork ran diluted pink, and the moans of the wounded drifted like prayer. Gray wind survived, though wounded. Robb emerged blood-spattered, eyes haunted but alive. Catelyn dismounted, knees buckling, and folded him in shaking arms. Around them, the world reeled, but for a breath, they were simply mother and son again. "Victory," Robb whispered. "No," she said, tears tracing dirt on her cheeks. "A reprieve." Because she felt it even then. The war had only deepened, like a wound probed by fateful fingers. Jaime's death had assured that no peace could be forged, no ransom bargained. What was broken would remain broken until one house lay in ashes, and the other, in ruin. In the dream that found Tywin Lannister that night, Jaime stood headless yet speaking, the severed mouth shaping words only Tywin understood. "Legacy is ash, father. The gold you hoard cannot purchase time." When he woke, Tywin stared into the embers of his brazier, and knew the dream spoke truth. So he wrote letters, to Dorne, to Highgarden, binding fate with wax and seal. He would tear the North Stone from stone if that was the price of pride. Autumn bled into early winter. Snowflakes drifted upon the trident, fragile and fleeting. Catelyn walked River Run's battlements, feeling each white petal melt upon her brow. She thought of Ned's promise that spring would follow every winter, and wondered if this winter might never end. She paused at the western parapet. Below, the river rolled relentless toward the sunset sea, carrying leaves and secrets alike. Somewhere downstream, Jaime's headless corpse moldered beneath a cairn of stones. She whispered a quiet prayer for his soul. Not for mercy, but for understanding, that he might know why she chose as she did. Footsteps approached. It was Robb, cloaked in wolf fur. Together they watched snow dance upon dark waters. "Mother," he said, "the scouts report Tywin massing again. He will strike come spring, and we will meet him," she replied. Robb touched her hand. "Tell me truly, did we err?" She closed her eyes, feeling the cool kiss of winter on her lashes. "We chose the only path left to us." She answered, "If the gods deem it error, they may yet show us another way. Until then we stand, whatever cost." Beneath them, the red fork flowed, indifferent, eternal, and above, a single dire wolf howled. Long, mournful, carrying on the wind until even the stones seemed to listen. The tale of lions and wolves was far from done. The game moved ever forward, each piece hunted by the shadow of its own choices. Yet in the quiet between battles, in the fragile hush before next bloodshed, Catelyn Stark allowed herself one breath of freezing air, and held it as though it might preserve within her the memory of a world that once had room for mercy. Word count, 10,200. Character count, a 60,500. Yeah. A. Pen. Snow fell like whispers upon River Run's battlements, soft as lost prayers, yet the hush it spread could not quiet the thrum of armies in motion. By day, the courtyard echoed with the rasp of whetstones and the clamor of forges. By night, campfires freckled the riverbanks where tents sprouted like mushrooms in damp soil. The war was paused, not ended. Each hearth a sentry post, each ember a watchful eye. Catelyn Stark moved among her son's host, with the air of one haunting her own waking dream. Every face she passed carried both gratitude and accusation, a wordless reminder that justice and doom often walked in the same cloak. Inside the solar, parchment maps littered the long oak table. Candlelight revealed new stains, ink, wine, blood from a messenger's arrow wound, all feeding the tapestry of strategy. Sir Brynden Tully, his dark armor dulled by use, traced troop movements with a scarred finger. "If Tywin moves south to coax the Tyrells," he said, "the king in the north may cut him off at Stony Septi." The Blackfish's graveled voice made each word sound carved from river rock. Robb stood beside him, muscles taut beneath wolf cloak and boiled leather. "Our outriders report lion banners clustered around the Gold Road. They'll push west before snow locks the passes. If we shadow too closely, we risk an ambush." "Nah." Roose Bolton shifted in the shadows, pale eyes glinting. "Or we might lure them into one," he murmured, the corner of his mouth barely lifting. No one answered. The room's chill grew pronounced, as though his breath had stolen warmth from the flames. Catelyn leaned over the map, resisting the urge to rub her temples. "What of the phrase? If Lord Walder closes the twins again, we could be trapped between the Trident's floodwaters and Tywin's hammer." At mention of the phrase, even Bolton's confidence dimmed. Lord Walder's reply to Robb's last raven had arrived, wrapped in flattery and lined with barbs. A new list of demands, greater than before Jaime's death, was scrawled in a shaky hand that belied cunning sharper than Valyrian steel. The old bridge lord wanted hostages and marriages, gold and honors, and above all assurances that his house would not drown should the Lannisters sweep north. It was the letter of a spider weaving fresh silk, ready to consume whichever fly buzzed loudest. "We must appease him," Edmure said from the hearth, shifting uncomfortably. "River Run still bleeds from siege. If Uncle Walder seals his gates, our lines of retreat vanish. Let him have his weddings." Bah! Catelyn's shoulders stiffened. Her instinct recoiled at trading kin for passage across stone arches. Yet necessity was an iron collar. "I will speak to him," she said at last. "Perhaps my sisterly voice may temper his ambition." She saw the doubt flicker in Robb's eyes. He knew as she did that Walder Frey respected only advantage. Still, a mother must cling to hope, even as war peeled hope from bone. The raven that carried Cersei Lannister's grief to Highgarden arrived on wings crusted with frost. Lady Olenna Tyrell read the parchment once, then again before arching a thin, skeptical brow. In the Red Keep, the Queen threatened vengeance. In Highgarden, the Queen of Thorns weighed opportunity. She poured a cup of arbor white, swirled it, and contemplated the vintage as though it contained portents more trustworthy than maesters. Across the chamber, Mace Tyrell puffed his chest. The Lannisters beg our spear's mother. Jaime's death must have rattled them. Rattled. Olenna clicked her tongue. Robbed of their golden cock is more like. She plucked a rose from a vase and stripped it of petals. Tywin will clutch any ally who smells of victory, yet gold alone cannot mend a broken sword arm. Mace flushed at the crudeness yet nodded. We might bargain the Iron Throne for Margaery. Olenna's smile sharpened. A bloated red throne is little use if the realm starves amid war. We shall parley, yes, but not rush. A second letter will come, sweeter than the first. Lions roar loudest when cornered, and a roar often hides the tremble. And now, she cast the petal-less stem into the brazier. It hissed and curled into ash. Outside, the Reach's orchard slept beneath winter fog, unaware that their future might hinge on the old woman's tolerances for drama. South of River Run, the King's Road ran like a scar through lands ravaged by foragers. Sansa Stark traveled it only in dream and dread. In truth, she remained caged within the Red Keep, where her world had shrunk to the span of a bedchamber and the corridor beyond. The walls glowed ochre in candlelight, but nothing could warm them. They held echoes of Jaime's execution. The hushed horror in servants' eyes whispered rumors that painted her mother a butcher of knights. Joffrey strutted through those rumors like a peacock stained by fresh blood, brandishing them as proof of northern barbarism. When he visited Sansa now, his jibes carried a raw edge. Your beastly brother murdered my uncle. He sneered one supper, tearing a quail apart with grubby fingers. Should I send his head north? Or yours? The quail's wishbone snapped in two. Sansa suppressed a shudder, recalling the thunk of ice as her father's head had rolled beneath Baelor's sap. Tyrion visited afterward, unannounced, with words gentler than she expected. He found her window seat beneath a moonless sky and offered honeyed pear slices on a silver plate. Sometimes, he told her, when the large beasts roar, the smaller animals must burrow and wait for quiet. She did not understand at first, but the kindly tone coaxed her tears. He listened and promised no schemes, only that he would speak with the Queen to spare her further cruelty. Whether he could sway Cersei's grief-lashed temper remained unseen, but in the darkness, Sansa clung to the dwarf's uncertain mercy. Arya Stark, meanwhile, stalked a very different darkness. Beneath the root-riven floors of an abandoned inn off the King's Road, she crouched with Gendry and hot pie around a meager fire of dung and broken chair legs. The news of the kingslayer's execution had reached even wandering rats. Every sellsword company now watched for a chance to snatch a wolf or a lion cub for ransom. Arya listened to thieves argue over names and loyalties, until the shapes of honor blurred. Her outraged vision of justice dimmed each night. The cold gnawed deeper, leaving behind a harder, thinner blade of purpose. Survive. Reach River Run. Find Robb. Warn him that Southron vengeance came on fleet feet. Gendry handed her the helm he was forging, a crudely hammered bull's head. You'll need something sturdier than that skinny sword, he said, nodding at Needle. She bristled but accepted his care in the spirit given. She slid the helm over her tangled hair and felt anonymous, armored by anonymity. If Jaime Lannister could lose his life in a heartbeat, any name might. Better to be no one until the time came to be Arya Stark again. In the Westerlands, Cersei and Tywin's letters crossed paths like blades. Tywin's second message, delivered by a courier with frostbitten lips, instructed his daughter to ready every last barrel of wildfire beneath the city. Immolate kings landing before surrender. Cersei's reply reached him as he hosted War Council in Ashmark. Diversify alliances swiftly, for the small council wavered under Tyrion's measured caution, and the faith now whispered of divine retribution for kinslaying. Father and daughter thus fueled each other's fury, forging it into something perilous to friend and foe alike. Sir Kevin risked rebuke by urging Tywin toward temperance. Jaime would want the house preserved, he argued. If we burn too much, there will be no realm left to rule. Tywin's golden gaze sliced through him. Preservation without dominance is defeat. I will not have Lannisport children learning songs of a wolf queen who once toppled lions. Yet in private, Tywin reread his daughter's letter thrice, fingers brushing the words as though expecting them to bleed. Beyond the sunset sea and Bravos, a girl with silver hair and mismatched eyes stood before the Iron Bank's austere columns. Arya? No. An impostor. One of the faceless men, his flesh wearing her likeness as he approached a silk-robed banker. A debt must be paid, he whispered, presenting a codex of sigils. Lion, trout, wolf, rose. The banker paled. Across the ocean, coin would fund blades. War always paid dividends. The many-faced god collected interest daily. Back within Riverrun's walls, the nights grew colder still. Catelyn found refuge in the rookery, where Maester Vyman's ravens croaked secrets into her hair. She donned woolen gloves and penned appeals to northern houses never yet called. Manderleys of White Harbor, umbers of Last Hearth. Her script flowed steadier than her thoughts. Each quill stroke a plea for grain and cooperative confidence. Sleep drifted like a stranger at the edge of lamplight, elusive. One snow-muffled dawn she descended to the kennel where gray wind rested, flanks still wrapped in salve-soaked cloth. Robb knelt beside the direwolf, whispering soft northern lullabies from childhood. He did not see her at first. She watched his gloved fingers comb the creature's fur, saw how the wolf's amber eyes followed every motion, bound by a bond beyond words. He thinks he failed me, Robb murmured without turning. He saved you, she replied, moving closer. He's wounded because I led him into slaughter, like every man who fell that day. His shoulders hunched beneath the wolfskin. How do commanders bear it? Some drown in ale, Catelyn said. Others in vengeance. A few learn to endure. She placed a hand on his cloak. You must become one of the few. He exhaled a cloud of frost. And if vengeance hunts me, then remember, vengeance burns both hunter and hunted. She knelt beside him, meeting his gaze. We killed Jaime, but we need not kill ourselves. His eyes were still young, she saw. Young and already too old. She prayed they would not cloud entirely before spring's thaw. At Moat Cailin, Theon Greyjoy stood upon weathered ramparts and watched the bog mist swirl beneath. A raven perched on his gauntlet. A gift from Balon Greyjoy, bearing the Kraken's seal. Its message tasted of salt and iron. Father summoned him home, promising titles if he took the north while the Starks warred abroad. Theon's loyalty tugged between tide and hearth. Robb had treated him as brother, yet blood called louder than friendship, and the ocean thundered in his dreams. He tucked the letter into his doublet like a knife placed between ribs, unresolved. On a wind-scoured plain near Harrenhal, Gregor Clegane's riders set torches to villages whose names even Septons had forgotten. Smoke coiled skyward in broad black strokes, visible miles away. Refugees fled north, only to find the river crossings barred by swollen torrents. Each lament that reached Riverrun fanned the blaze of vengeance inside Robb's camp. But each crumb of bread shared with those refugees also starved the wolf host, draining winter stores before true deep winter yet arrived. Edmure worried openly. If we feed every hollow belly, by planting we'll gnaw bark. Sir Rendell Manderley, a portly knight newly arrived with fresh provisions from White Harbor, laughed full-throated. Better bark than lion meat after defeat. Roose Bolton's pale eyes flicked from lord to lord. Better to tighten belts now than choke later. Catelyn, overhearing, wondered whether he spoke of enemies or allies. Bolton's words always possessed twin edges. One facing foes, the other turned, oh so politely, inward. While men argued rations, Lady Talisa Magyar of Volantis rode into camp with a whisper of wings. She had been found tending small folk wounded in a raised orchard. When Robb encountered her beneath a white birch, her hands were crimson to the wrists from binding a sellsword's slashed abdomen. Catelyn soon learned of the foreign healer. Learned, too, How her son's eyes followed Talisa's every graceful stride. She noted the blush of youthful curiosity glimmering across war-hardened features and felt a pang of foreboding. Fray demands, fragile alliances, the ghosts of broken vows, all balanced now upon the subtle tilt of Robb's affections. That evening, as snowflakes twirled around the lantern-lit infirmary, Catelyn approached Talisa. "You have our thanks," she said, voice mild yet measuring. "But battlefield mercy seldom comes without cost." Talisa met her squarely. "Every life I save is coin enough, my lady. If your son will not hinder my work, I'll hinder no one's armies." "Work is shaped by where one sets her feet," Catelyn replied. "When feet stand in blood, it becomes political." She left the healer to ponder that, heart heavy. Tywin Lannister's political game turned toward Dorne. Letters slipped across deserts to Sunspear, promising vengeance for Oberyn Martell's slain sister should Tywin fail. Poisoned honey disguised as truth. Yet Doran Martell was slow to stir. His gouty feet anchored him to caution. The Prince of Dorne preferred whispers to battle cries, and the North's chill rarely reached the burning walls of his water gardens. The letters sat untouched, their seals melting in dry heat. So Tywin tightened the noose elsewhere. He sent emissaries bearing casks of arbor gold to Pike, tempting Balon Greyjoy with lordship over all western shores. If Theon betrayed the wolf pack, the Kraken could gnash from the flank while lions struck head-on. The old lion had not forgotten the nightmares of Rain or Tarbeck. He would rather tear roots from the earth than feel them constrict about his ankles. Inside Riverrun's sept, Catelyn found Lysa's letter awaiting. A rare, rambling missive from the airy blaming singers, Sellswords, even the maiden for Jaime's death. Lysa urged Catelyn to flee north with her sons and seek airy refuge beyond the Bloody Gate. The invitation felt like stale bread, once nourishing, now brittle. Catelyn penned a measured refusal. "There is no high perch safe from grief." She wrote, "I will not abandon the Riverlands." She sealed it with Tully wax and prayed Lysa would not interpret pride as condemnation. Night deepened. Snow hissed on shutters. From the courtyard came the dull clang of steel. Robb practicing with Lord Karstark's eldest remaining son, Harrion. Sparks spattered the cobbles as blades collided. The sound soothed Catelyn, rhythmic as Ned's voice telling northern legends. Yet Ned was gone. Jaime was gone, and new legends rose at terrible speed. She climbed the parapet to watch them dance the deadly waltz. Talisa stood near the torch rack, cloth bundle of poultices in hand. Catelyn's fear tightened again. She could see affection blooming between the two. Even through layered surcoats, their glances brushed like fingertips. Walder Frey's list of demands awaited council tomorrow. Catelyn bit her lip until she tasted copper. Love in wartime was a blade's edge, thrilling, shining, and prone to slip. In her chambers later, she lay sleepless. Memories surfaced of her own betrothal feast, the smell of trenchers stacked with trout and lemon. The hush as Ned spoke but one vow and meant it forever. Would Robb wield such surety? She pressed fingers to her eyelids, chasing tears away before they formed. Deep in the dungeons of Harrenhal, Jaqen H'ghar recited 3 names to steel bars. Tywin, Cersei, Walder. Each syllable left his tongue like a struck bell, ringing promises only the Red God might honor. Whether he pursued that debt north or south remained a mystery even to himself. The black cell door creaked. A jailer slid him a crust of bread and a knowing smile, as if he had overheard the echo of those names and wondered if he, too, might belong upon that whispered list. When first thaw teased the riverbanks, and early false spring, Riverrun's ravens carried Walder Frey's final terms. Catelyn stood as Robb sliced the seal with a bone-handled knife. The parchment unfurled. Edmure must wed a Frey bride before harvest's end, and Robb must present himself for blessing at the twins, promising very public gratitude. Nothing about hostages. Lord Walder smelled advantage in symbols now. Robb's jaw nodded. "Edmure," he said, voice tempered steel. "This falls upon you." Edmure flushed scarlet. "I'll wed a Frey, if it saves the realm." Yet his eyes betrayed dread at some pox-marked child bride. The blackfish muttered beneath his breath about trout swimming into nets, but offered no open protest. Catelyn exhaled relief laced with anxiety. A wedding might stave off Frey betrayal. For a season. But seasons turned swiftly under Tywin's orchestration. Bolton's ravens flew at night, unseen. One winged to the Dreadfort detailing troop numbers, supply levels, the budding link between Robb and the Volantine healer. Another soared south, instructions couched in careful cipher. No one saw them. Night swallowed both birds and secrets. In King's Landing, Tyrion Lannister's schemes took root in the shadow of his father's might. He secured alliances with Braavosi spice merchants, promising them northern furs once peace settled. He paid gold cloaks double wages from his own purse to ensure their loyalty should wildfire ignite. He charmed the High Septon with gifts to orphaned children. Yet each measure felt like shoveling sand against a rising tide. Tywin's fury, Cersei's grief, and Joffrey's cruelty mixed into a storm. He doubted he could outthink forever. One dusk he received a parchment bearing a seal he did not recognize. A 7-pointed star over a wolf skull. Inside, only 5 words. Save her or she burns. No signature. Sansa? Arya? Or some cruel jest? He poured wine and contemplated the letter until stars faded. Mind-tracing possibilities like Warren's. On the sea cliffs of Pike, Balon Greyjoy addressed his salt captains beneath a slate sky. The wolves and lions gnaw each other. The kraken will rise. Salt-blasted cheers echoed off basalt. The sound reached Theon's ears like a dirge. He stood among reavers who eyed him as half-traitor, half-prize. When his father declared him emissary to Winterfell, take the castle with guile, not siege. Theon's stomach dropped. He would betray a family who had raised him, or fail and earn his father's scorn anew. The noose tightened. He looked toward the mainland and remembered Robb's smile beside a hearth in Winterfell, the smell of hot cider and wood smoke. But he also remembered the cold mockery on the King's Road when northern lords teased him as a hostage, dressed in lordling's furs. Pride whispered, "Choose yourself." Catelyn's next journey south to the Twins began beneath a sky the color of hammered pewter. She rode flanked by 50 guards, Edmure at her side, the Blackfish scouting ahead. The Red Fork churned with meltwater, hammering root and rock. Though she carried white flags of parley, she could almost taste crossbow bolts aimed from tree shadows. They reached the Twins on the 5th day. The great stone castles rose like dour sentinels, astride the river. Walder Frey greeted them in a drafty hall hung with tattered banners and children's. Laughter ringing from alcoves where brood upon brood peered at newcomers with bright suspicion. "Lady Catelyn," Lord Walder's voice cracked like dry bark. "Come to trade another head." She forced a stiff smile. "Only vows today." Edmure bowed deeply. The Frey daughters and granddaughters filed in, faces ranging from winsome to pinched. Laughter scurried among them as they whispered odds on which of their number would snare a Tully lord. Edmure's cheeks shifted from pale to crimson. Catelyn spent 3 days bargaining over dowries, feast menus, the proper length of a bride's train, the escort size for Robb's future visit. Walder insisted on details as if minutiae could brick up his fear of lion reprisal. Catelyn saw that fear and tried to exploit it, weaving assurances of northern victory. She promised carpets of Frey blue would line the great hall in Winterfell. Lord Walder cackled, agreeing readily, yet his beady eyes measured each phrase. Edmure met his future bride, Rosalind, a shy girl with soft brown eyes and a tremulous smile. To Catelyn's surprise, Edmure appeared charmed. He found excuses to linger near harp music where Rosalind played. She blushed at his compliments. At supper, Edmure leaned close to Catelyn and whispered, "If duty must bind, I could fare worse." She squeezed his hand, grateful for small mercies. On departure morning, Lord Walder pressed a parting word. "Lady Stark, convey my condolences to King Robb for his loss of Sword Jaime's ransom. Funny coin, vengeance, costs more than it buys." She inclined her head, refusing to swallow bait. As their column rode north, Blackfish joined her. The phrase plotted behind their smiles, he muttered. Their eyes keep counting. I know, she said. But we have little choice. A bridge crossed is safer than a bridge withheld. Bridges collapse, he warned. She looked to the sky, where carrion crows drifted on cold thermals. So do kingdoms. The earthen road toward River Run glistened with chill rain. Each hoof squelch sounded like an oath struggling to cling. At dusk, scouts brought urgent news. Lannister outriders spotted near Pink Maiden Castle. Less than 3 days' ride. Robb's host marched too, converging upon a confluence of fate. Catelyn quickened her pace, but by the time she reached River Run's gates, heavy fog swirled by torchlight. She found Robb in the war tent poring over fresh dispatches. He looked up, exhaustion momentarily replaced by flame. Mother, Tywin moves. He pointed to ink-marked routes. Our outriders confirm lion banners marching toward the Ruby Ford. He means to outflank us. She relayed Frey agreements. Relief softened his mouth, then hardened again. A wedding buys passage, not victory. We must strike before he pulls the Tyrells. Then snow. Roose Bolton cleared his throat. An open field engagement favors Tywin's cavalry. Better to lure them into the bogs near Seaguard. The Blackfish countered. We cannot abandon River Run's defense. Let them come. Arrows and trenches will bleed them. Arguments spiraled. Catelyn watched, weighing each lord's pride. Then Talisa entered, summoned to change Robb's bandage. Her presence tilted the scales. Robb's gaze lingered too long. She saw Karstark's stern glare take note. Saw Bolton's cold eyes flicker with calculation. Later, Catelyn cornered her son outside the tent. Fog beaded his hair with silver droplets. You must remember your promises, she said softly. My promises bind me to victory, he replied. Your promises bind you to the phrase. He flinched. Mother, love is a luxury of peace. War demands harder coin. He looked away toward torchlit men sharpening spears. I will not be father's mirror image. He chose honor over love once. Look where it led. The words struck her like sleet. Ned never regretted loving me. He regretted failing to save his people. Do not twist his memory to excuse folly. N.T. Robb's breath plumed white. I will win this war first, he said. Then I will honor vows. She prayed he could hold both ambitions, feared he would drop one and shatter both. She touched his cheek. You lead wolves, Robb. Make sure they stay wolves, not stray dogs sniffing every tempting scent. He captured her hand, squeezed gently. I hear you, mother. She wanted to believe. Theon Greyjoy's longship slipped up the stony coast under moonless dark. Sails died to match night waves. They set silent men ashore east of Deepwood Motte, slit throats of sentries, opened gates to ironborn reavers. A dozen Nori men fell before horns could sound. The Kraken banner rose over the wooden keep by dawn. Theon watched, heart pounding with grim triumph. Loyalty to father tasted bitter but potent. Each victory numbed the bitterness. He penned a letter to Robb, apologizing for absence, and claiming he rode to rally support, omitting mention of captured castles. Dishonesty needled him, yet pride pressed ink to parchment. He sealed it with his own sigil, a direwolf quartered with Kraken, unsure which part he betrayed more. At River Run, ravens delivered grim tidings. Ironborn raids along western coasts. Dread general across the north. Robb cursed sea devils. Catelyn's heart clenched at Theon's possible treachery. But Tywin's army marched closer. Choices narrowed as river ice. Council agreed. Fight at the Ruby Ford where the Red Fork met the King's Road. Engineers dug trenches, felled trees across paths, laced banks with caltrops. Peasant levies hauled stones for walls of loose rubble. Snow melted to slush under toil. Priests of the 7 blessed weapons, northern shamans tied weirwood twigs to spears. The morning of battle dawned under bruised purple sky. Fog clung low, muffling hoofbeats. Catelyn rode through camp, offering quiet words. She remembered names: Roderick Norrie, Sir Wendell, the Crannog archer called Pine, knowing many would not live till dusk. She wished she could promise sunlit futures. Instead, she offered faith in their cause. On a rise overlooking the ford, Robb waited astride a gray stallion, helm under arm. Ice crystals sparkled in his beard. Gray wind crouched at his stirrup, bandaged flank healed to thick scar. Drums beat slow, swelling like a heartbeat that quickened as lion banners emerged through mist. Gold armor flashed, forming ranks 10 deep. Trumpets sang harsh challenge. Tywin rode its center under banner of roaring lion and red sun of leopard. He raised a gauntleted hand. The vast machine of war rolled forward. Arrows hissed first, northern shafts whistling death. Lannister shields formed turtle shells as volleys rattled. Trenches swallowed cavalry in shrieks of broken limbs. Yet Tywin's vanguard pressed, bridging trenches with corpses, hacking timbers aside. Trumpets blared again. Heavy infantry surged with tower shields, gladius, short swords flashing. Catelyn commanded reserves on the hill. She saw Roose Bolton's center hold, saw Karstark's flank waver as Sir Adam Forrester hammered with mace and chain. When Lion Knights breached a gap, Robb himself charged, gray wind leaping ahead. Steel collided in cacophony. Snow churned crimson. Harpstrings of nerve stretched taut within her. Time became a series of frozen tableaux. Robb trading blows with Sir Flement Brax, sparks hollowing blade edges. Bolton's sigil men forming a cold wall, stabbing methodically. Edmure and Blackfish riding down disordered sellswards. She issued orders. Shifting reserves. A pike wedge there. A cavalry thrust here. She rode to rally wavering men. Her cloak snagged on a splintered lance. Tore. She hardly noticed. Hours dragged. Fog lifted. Sun glinted off thousands of blades. The air stank of blood. Shit. Crushed grass. Lannister horns shrilled a regroup. Tywin saw his center threatened. He committed his last reserves. Clegane brigades, monstrous knights roaring behind mastiffs. The Hound himself led, helm snarling. They crashed into Bolton's line with hurricane force. Shields buckled, pikes snapped. Catelyn's heart dropped as she saw Roose fall back, crimson-green swirl of banners receding. She signaled for Blackfish to reinforce. But Bolton's retreat turned suspiciously orderly. No panic, just cool withdrawal, opening a gap wider. Tywin surged into the gap like a blade into flesh. Too late he sensed trap. River mud concealed spiked pits. Horses screamed, flailing. Crossbow bolts rained from hidden ditches. Yet still, his core pressed, fury forging path. Robb led countercharge from ridge. Northern cavalry, thundering, dirk wolves howling. The roar of collision shook earth. Catelyn spurred forward with her guard, slashing through disoriented Lannister archers to reach wounded men. An arrow nicked her arm. Blood seeped warmth beneath sleeve, but she rode on. Dusk bled across sky before Tywin signaled withdrawal. Trumpets wailed forlorn. Lion banners staggered south. Wolves bayed victory, yet the cost lay plain. Karstark's son Harrion felled by Clegane axe. Scores of Manderly knights strewn like broken chessmen. Bolton's contingent curiously intact, their armor nearly clean. Catelyn dismounted near Field Hospital. Talisa worked. Sleeves drenched scarlet, hair matted. Robb staggered in, armor rent but body whole. He gripped his mother's shoulders. "We held," he managed. She cupped his face. "You live. That is triumph enough." But as she spoke, banners came galloping from the east. Crimson lions overcrossed krakens. A rider reined hard, breath pluming. Moat Cailin has fallen. Ironborn strike deep into the north. Winterfell is threatened. Robb reeled. Gray wind snarled. Catelyn felt the ground yawning again. Victory tasted of ash. The war had sprouted new heads like some hydra. Lop 1 and 2 more arose, jaws snapping. Night fell with bitter sleet. Field fires flickered, casting monstrous shadows. Somewhere amid moans of wounded men, Roose Bolton stood alone, scraping clean his dagger, watching flames reflect in its polished steel. When he turned away, the dagger's edge bore not a hint of blood. Catelyn walked among the stretchers until frost pinched her toes numb. She knelt by Harrion Karstark's body, closed his staring eyes. She whispered a prayer to the old gods and knew, uncertain who listened any more. Across the river, Tywin's campfires burned like molten coins scattered across velvet. She knew he would not sleep in peace. Neither would she. The game had merely entered its next brutal round. As she rose, snow swirled around her like a hush of white wings. Somewhere within that hush, she imagined Ned's voice again, soft as falling snow. "Winter is not the end, Cat. It is a testing ground." She set her jaw. The test continued, and she would endure, even should every choice carve new scars upon her heart. Word count approx. 5,160. K. Storm clouds rolled across the western horizon like slow herds of shadowed mammoths, their bellies bruised purple with pent-up thunder. In the desolation between Tywin Lannister's shattered host and the battered river lords, ravens wheeled as though tethered to invisible strings, waiting to feast upon whichever army fell first. Catelyn Stark felt their dark wings inside her chest whenever she paused, as if her own heart-beaten thoughts might scatter like black feathers the instant she loosened her grip on purpose. So she refused herself the luxury of stillness. Motion, constant, deliberate, commanding, became her armor. She began each gray dawn by walking the camps, cloak tugged tight against wet cold, thanking archers whose fingers bled raw, praising quartermasters who coaxed scant turnip soup into sustenance for thousands. Small mercies mattered. The men bowed, cheered, or muttered tired greetings. And in their eyes she saw what weighed heavier than the frost. They believed a mother's resolve could shield them as surely as iron. She knew belief itself could feed courage. She let them drink their fill from hers. Robb meanwhile obsessed over maps. Howling wolf banners carved from tin markers skittered across tanned hide as he argued lines with his captains. Each scratch of charcoal along a riverbank marked some man's son doomed to die when next horns sounded. Yet Robb's spirit burned high. The victory at the Ruby Ford had tasted sweet, and the direwolf inside him hungered for the next throat. Grey Wind's wound had knit to scar. The beast prowled restless nights, claws clicking on flagstones, mirroring his lord's need to hunt. Robb's council could see it, the quick glint in his blue eyes whenever scouts returned with rumor of lion movements. And Catelyn saw it most of all. That fire had lit Ned's gaze too when the rebellion turned. She prayed her son would heed the cautions his father once had. But fires crave fuel. Word from the north arrived thick as storm-driven kelp. Deepwood Motte, Torrens Square, even the stony halls of the stony shore hoisted Kraken banners. Theon's name slithered from messenger lips first as question, then as curse. Theon, who had laughed beside Robb during snowball fights, who had sworn oaths of brotherhood, now roared seaborne victory while Robb fought 1,000 leagues away. Bran's letter spoke of children shepherded into crypts, of Maester Luwin lighting watchfires upon every tower. Winterfell still stood but trembled. When Robb read those lines beside his mother beneath torchlight, he slammed fist to table hard enough to send carved horsemen tumbling. "I will ride this hour," he growled, "and drag him by his treacherous braid before the old gods." Catelyn caught his wrist. "If you ride north," she said, "Tywin rides south unchallenged. The realm is a board with 2 wolves and 1 lion. Leave the lion free and he devours all." Her voice shook only afterward in private. Bolton's quiet counsel slithered through meetings. "Let me march to reclaim the north, your grace. My men know those swamps. In mud, we are knives unseen." Robb considered. Others whispered warnings. The flayed man cared for Bolton more than for Crown, but desperation dogs decisions. Finally, Robb granted him leave, with half the rear guard, and Karstark outriders. Bolton bowed slow, pale lips twisting something like a smile. Catelyn watched him ride out beneath wan dawn, cloak of pink flayed skin, lining crimson silk. She memorized the tilt of his helm, and promised herself she would trace him, if he vanished into frost and treachery. In King's Landing, dusk's bell tolled above the great sept of Baelor while Sansa Stark knelt before an alcove candle, hands clasped so tight her nails bit flesh. She prayed first to the maiden, then the mother, then to any ear that might hear. Seven. Old gods, nameless whispers in the dark. Shadows rippled across marble as torchbearers passed. She lifted eyes and saw Joffrey's grin reflected in polished stone. Terror prickled her skin, though he was not there. Lately he haunted even the quiet. Since Jaime's head fell, the king-to-be grew at once unpredictable and precise, like a boy testing new blades on alley cats. He threatened Sansa with vile punishments should Robb press further south. He commanded the court fool to sing verses about direwolves eating their pups. Once he dragged her into the throne room just to press a borax-smeared coin against her lips, laughing when it burned faint welts. Gold kisses softer than wolves. Gold. Each humiliation etched fear deeper, but inside fear, steel had begun to grow. Tyrion noticed. On the night Joffrey quoted the crossbow bolts meant for traitor sisters, the imp sent Podrick with a plain cloak and a note. Wear this when next you traverse the hall at dawn. A bird sits above the arch that mislikes crimson cloth. She obeyed, and so avoided a concealed bucket of nothing worse than swill. Yet the gesture told her Tyrion groped for ways to protect without open defiance. She resolved to seek his guidance when chance allowed. Meanwhile, she cultivated meekness by day and memorized guard rotations by moonlight. Through the Red Keep's colonnades slithered other intrigues. Pycelle, hair unkempt, recited warnings of wildfire caches, unstable after years untended. Cersei dismissed him with a glare fit to melt stone. Qyburn, pale and courteous, slid into her confidences with talk of powders to still nightmares. At small council sessions Tyrion fenced words with Petyr Baelish, Littlefinger's smile ever sharp, hinting he knew secret tides in every purse. Varys fluttered, gathering whispers about Tyrell envoys nearing with scented olive oil and bushels of bright oranges, offerings for alliance. Each time Jaime's name emerged the room chilled, as though his spirit wandered the corridors complaining of broken vows. Cersei's grief hardened into a blade honed by brandy. She walked the Tower of the Hand at night, trailing lace, reciting remembered lullabies she once hummed to her twin. Tyrion found her there one dawn, empty goblet dangling from 2 fingers. "You cannot raise him with ghosts," he offered gently. She turned, eyes bloodshot. "No, little brother, but I can bury them." Her lips curled around the final word, and Tyrion swore he saw wildfire's green gleam inside her pupils. Across the Blackwater Rush, high on the walls of the Dragon Pit, a ragged group of faith militants gathered beneath a symbol rarely seen these past decades. The 7-pointed star carved crude upon a wooden disc bound by hemp rope. The new High Septon, elected after the last fell mysteriously from his litter, spoke of cleansing fire, of wolves and krakens and lions alike, sinners all. The crowd murmured hungry assent. Among them, a one-eyed man with burn-scarred cheek listened in silence. Later that night he paid 2 boys a coin each to scratch star sigils upon Lannister storehouses. Chaos root thick where old derelictions festered. Back at River Run, the wounded healed slowly while the dead were catalogued by dim lamplight. Talisa's infirmary overflowed. She bent above men delirious with fever, her Volantine vowels softening curses that spilled from cracked lips. Sometimes Robb aided her, holding shoulders as she cut away gangrenous cloth. He learned to stanch bleeding with pinch of wolfsbane and honey-soaked linen, shared midnight labors, forged intimacy sharper than swords. When at last Talisa allowed exhaustion to claim her, she drifted asleep, leaning against him, on a straw mattress, meant for 2 patients long dead. Catelyn found them thus one freezing dawn, his cloak draped over her, their fingers interlaced. She backed away without waking them, but dread coiled inside. The bridge at the twins now seemed carved from melting ice. Edmure's wedding approached. Walder Frey insisted ceremony coincide with new moon, claiming auspicious tides. Catelyn suspected he favored darkness to count guests unseen. She wrote lists. How many lords to send? How many banners to keep guarding River Run? Which casks of Westerland's red might soothe cross-looking Frey cousins? She decided to remain behind. Someone must keep counsel if Tywin struck during nuptial revel. Robb too must stay to oversee lines, so it would fall to Edmure alone to charm his bride's kin. She pressed him with advice. Dance often, praise the cooks. Drink sparingly until bedding. Edmure blushed dutiful yeses, though anxiety pooled in his eyes like rain. 3 days before departure, ravens arrived from Stannis Baratheon. The parchment bore his staghorn seal above a burning heart. He addressed Lord Robb Stark, styled king in the north, and accused Lannisters of usurpations innumerable, promising vengeance on false-born Joffrey. He demanded Robb bend knee and join righteous war. In return, he would name the north a kingdom beholden only to Storm's End. Robb snorted. "One king at a time," he said, "and I intend it to be me." Still, he wondered aloud whether dual wars might split Tywin's attention. Catelyn cautioned that Baratheon fires often consumed friend and foe alike. Yet the letter changed subtle calculus. Perhaps the Reach would think twice before warring both wolf and stag. Bolton's sortie crept up the neck, chilling frogs to silence. He took Barrowton easily. Lady Dustin feigned hospitality while her garrison opened gates at night, under whispered promises of reward. Bolton hung any who resisted on flayed crosses beside the King's Road, white skin crimson striped against snowy pines. Word reached Winterfell of his approach. Maester Luwin sent ravens pleading alliance, unaware daggers already hid behind smiling lips. Bolton answered with courtesy. "Hold strong, I come as loyal banner to King Robb." Yet his letter smelled faintly of blood where wax cooled. Theon, inside Winterfell's smoky hall, drank shade of the evening liquor stolen from Corthian merchant wagons, hoping its strange violet hue might fortify nerve. He strode among captive Stark boys, Bran pale in ivory chair built by Hodor, Rickon baring teeth like cub direwolf, and tried to appear unshakable. But each raven reminding him Bolton advanced sapped swagger. He'd intended glorious conquest, not siege with 100 ironborn inside stone too large to guard. Desperation whispered savage counsel. Kill the boys, blame Bolton, flee with glory intact. Yet Theon hesitated, memory of Robb's grin dogging his step. Instead, he took the farmers' sons, burned them, past charred corpses as Stark heirs. Smoke spiraled above First Keep, carrying lies skyward. In River Run, the stench of Era reached Catelyn on cold wind. She clutched letter until knuckles numbed, tears falling silent into the hearth. On the road to the twins, Edmure's bridal party wound like bright thread through frost-rimmed willows. Roslyn's dowry coffers rattled on wagons. Lapis beads, cross-stitched linens, 2 harpists from Seaguard. Sir Desmond Grell commanded escort of 500. Too few to provoke frays, enough to deter brigands. Catelyn kissed her brother farewell and pressed him with final admonition. "May every smile you give be earnest and every toast honest." She watched flags vanish beyond bend of river, heart squeezed between hope and foreboding. That night, as silver fog blanketed camp, Robb summoned his mother and Blackfish into a secluded tent. Talisa waited outside, tending candlelight. Inside, Robb's face glowed copper in lamplight. "I must tell you," he began, voice low, "I have no choice but to marry." Catelyn's breath caught. Blackfish stiffened. "Marry the Frey girl, yes," she said, carefully praying. Robb looked down. "No. I took vows with Talisa at dawn." Silence cracked open like limb in frost. Outside, wind rattled wool walls. Blackfish muttered a prayer sharp with profanity. Catelyn's world spun. She clutched table's edge. "You swore, Robb. You swore before men and gods." He met her eyes. Shame, warring stubbornness. I swore when I was a boy chasing lions across rivers. After Harrion fell, after I watched Talisa heal men my sword failed to save, I could not use love as coin. His voice frayed. The phrase will understand. She almost laughed. The sound brittle. Walder Frey understands insult more than love. She ran fingers through graying red hair. You've risked every alliance for one heartbeat. Tears threatened. She bit them back. She would not weep guilt upon his shoulders tonight. Too many burdens already. I will send envoys, Robb insisted. Offer new treaties. Lord Walder loves gold. He can have River Run's western tariffs. I'll name 2 Freys to my personal guard. He listed gifts like balm upon mortal wound. Catelyn listened until anger ebbed into cold resignation. At last she said, "Then may your marriage bring joy enough to quiet ghosts that will follow." She kissed his brow, left before grief cracked voice. Outside, Talisa watched anxious. Catelyn offered no word, only a nod acknowledging the knot no blade could cut. Beneath the twin soot-black towers, Edmure's wedding unfurled in candlelit splendor. Minstrels played soft airs, roast capons steamed on trencher-lined tables. Frey grandsons japed crude jests, and Rosalind's shy smile charmed even hardened river knights. Lothar Frey officiated betting songs. Walder himself clapped hands, delighted each time a Tully lord drained cup to the dregs. Yet beneath merriment ran undertow of chill. Some guests noticed crossbowmen lining gallery above hall. Others smelled pitch hiding in torches smell. Many simply drank, eager for warmth. At the height of revel, a drum beat resounded. Not from musicians but from outside, deep as heart below floorboards. The great John paused mid-belch. Rosalind's eyes rimmed wet. She whispered to Edmure and tears spilled. Before alarm could ripple wide, crossbow strings thrummed. Bolts rained. A piper's flute cut off mid-trill with wet gargle. Carnage erupted. Frey men dragging blades from under skirts, stabbing. The Stark banners drooped heavy with blood. Edmure survived only because 2 quarrels pierced hapless minstrel shielding his chest. By the time he realized, Frey soldiers slammed ashwood cudgel to his skull. Darkness swallowed him. Outside in the rain-slick courtyard, Stark guards witnessed gate chains drop. Portcullis descending slow, trap sprung, arrows fell from ramparts. Hounds trained to scent northern cloaks lunged. The night air filled with screams quick cut. No raven escaped. Frey fowlers shot down each bird released, feathers drifting like gray snow. Lord Walder, expression mild as butter, oversaw slaughter from dais. As silence settled, he lifted goblet. The Red Fork is kindly to fish, less so to wolves. Blood spattered his jowls. He licked lips. Waste not good wine, he chided, sipping. News reached River Run days later on a single surviving page who had hidden beneath hog carcasses. Catelyn received him in the courtyard. The man collapsed, clutching arrow-scored shoulder, babbling visions of crossbow bolts and banners aflame. At mention of Edmure, he wept. At mention of Frey's toasts to King Joffrey, he spat blood and fainted. When maesters carried him away, Catelyn stood unmoving as frost. Robb arrived moments later, Talisa at his side. One glance at his mother's face told tale. She whispered, "They murdered our family in a hall of bread and salt." Robb's voice cracked. "Edmure?" She shook head. He closed eyes. When they opened, they were iron. Gray wind howled a note, so mournful women wept. That night, Robb called every bannerman still breathing. Torches flickered in war tent as he vowed ruin upon the twins. Their stones will feed crows. Lords roared assent, but dread wormed inside. Many had kin lost there. Meanwhile, Tywin Lannister, camped near Sarsfield, received raven from Walder. Frey loyalty restored. The wolf bleeds. Tywin allowed himself small smile. He wrote, "Gold shall follow." Then he ordered Ceridam to ready horse. "We press at dawn. A wounded beast fights hardest, but bleeded enough, it dies." In the north, Bolton's banners reached Winterfell under drifts of black-winged ravens. Smoke spiraled from broken towers. Theon's ironborn, ringed by flayed men poles, stared defiant. Bolton parleyed beneath white flag. Theon boasted charred corpses of Stark babes hung for display. Bolton expressed admiration, then offered terms. Safe passage to Pike. When Theon stepped through gate with handful of reavers, Bolton's men seized him, slicing hamstrings. Ramsay Snow, bastard of Bolton, emerged grinning wolfish as winter sun. He donned Theon's kraken cloak, proclaimed Winterfell liberated for King Robb. Then he put torches to the Great Hall, flayed captives, and raised granaries before marching south with prisoners and plunder, leaving charnel ruin behind. Bran and Rickon, alive in crypt shadows, heard only distant screams, but dared not surface until cinders cooled. Maester Luwin, dying from spear wound, found them. He urged them flee. Hodor carried Bran on wide back. Osha led Rickon through Wolfswood toward White Harbor. Beyond the burning walls, the old gods whispered through blasted weirwoods, urging the boys onward. Twin embers of a house nearly quenched. In Riverrun, banners sagged half-mast. Catelyn oversaw whispered burials for men returned in canvas wraps. Inside Solar she wrote letters none would see. Farewells to Ned, to Arya, to a world where oaths mattered. She sealed them with wax, then tossed them into brazier, watching words curl to ash. When she emerged onto ramparts, dawn-painted sky bruised red. Robb stood cloakless in bitter wind, gazing west. Snow dusted his curls. "We ride to the twins, mother," he said. "Alder dies." She hated to wound him again, yet forced truth. "Tywin marches behind your heels. Attack Walder and Lion claws your back. Hold the trident and Frey bites your throat." He slammed gauntleted fist upon Crenel. "What would you have me do?" "Kneel." She placed palm on his fist. "Win." The word sounded brittle, but carried whole of her hope. He exhaled and turned. "Then we lure Tywin into river again." They devised plan. Retreat across Red Fork, feigning weakness. Burn bridges behind. Draw Lion on narrow ground under longbow hail. But there were holes. Food stores low, men weary. Karstark, embittered by sons' deaths, refused counsel. And Manderlys murmured about returning north to defend homes. Worse. Ravens from White Harbor said Ramsay Snow burned Winterfell, took hostages. Robb convulsed with guilt. Catelyn held him as he whispered each brother's name. Tears freezing on cheeks. Grey Wind grew restless, pacing ramparts, snarling at unseen faces. Some said Direwolf sensed betrayal. Others hushed such talk. Yet, Roose Bolton's absence gnawed. Scouts reported his host encamped near Dreadfort, bringing Stark prisoners for trial. But paths snow-blocked. Catelyn half-prayed reports wrong. She remembered Roose's dagger shining too clean. Along the narrow sea road near Maidenpool, Arya Stark traveled with Brotherhood without banners, though they did not yet claim name. Lord Beric, patched and hollow-eyed, spoke of justice for small folk. Arya's heart sang at talk of wolves avenging hunts. But when she learned her mother's camp lay days north, she begged they ride. Beric demurred. Other missions pulled. One night she slipped off a rise under moonlight. Hot pie, whimpering farewell. Gendry chased her but turned back. Chains of cause bound him, he said. Arya pressed onward with nothing but needle and half-loaf. She repeated list of names to keep pace. Walder Frey, Tywin Lannister, Ser Meryn, Ilyn Payne. She added Theon, though uncertain if he still lived. Each name, a footstep into cold dark. In Highgarden, Olenna Tyrell received scented raven from Tywin. Promise of marriage between Joffrey and Margaery. She tapped parchment with fan. A lion offers Thorn a seat in sunlight. She mused, but sunlight fades. She summoned Lady Margaery, waved letter. "What think you, child?" Margaery smiled, eyes bright as fresh mint. "Better to rule beside a lion than under one." Olenna chuckled. "Then let us show the lioness how roses entwine." Within a week, Tyrell columns marched east, banners green and gold rippling. At Bitterbridge, they met Lannister outriders. Sir Loras clasped hands with Sir Adam. painting union for watching soldiers. The realm trembled. Two richest houses joined. Wolves now faced armies thrice their strength. At Greywater Watch, Jojen Reed dreamed of dark river choking on blood. He saw Grey Wind separated from Robb by stormy flood, heard mother's keening wail, felt ice crack beneath an old weirwood. When dawn broke, he sought his father. Howland Reed listened grave, plucked frog spear from wall. "We go to River Run," he declared. "The North remembers, but it must also act." Marsh boats were readied. They slid into Blackwater Rush Labyrinth, paddling swift as eels. Robb assembled war council. Snow drifted inside tent seams. Lords circled table, faces gaunt. Greyjohn spoke loudest. "Let Freys rot, we march west to sea. Plunder Lannisport, force Tywin chase." Karstark snarled. "Plunder cannot buy sons' lives." Manderley argued for retreat north to fight Ironborn. Tensions flared. Steel flashed, diffused. Robb pounded table. "We fight here." He unveiled plan. Dig fieldworks along Red Fork, lure Tyrell Lannister vanguard, use river ice channels to flank. Some nodded, others eyed weather. If thaw came early, river would swallow their trenches. Catelyn watched as politics cracked the unity forged at Whispering Wood. She realized victory required more than swords. It needed story. Ned had once taught her power of legend. Robert's rebellion succeeded because songs crowned it. She sought bards, commanded them craft ballads of Jaime's execution as righteous justice, of Frey treachery, of Bolton's rumored betrayal. She wanted rumors to race ahead of ravens, stirring hearts. War, she mused, was partly fought in lungs. That night she penned letter to Stannis appealing to common cause against treachery of Freys and Krakens. Sealed with direwolf wax. She penned another to Margaery Tyrell, praising her kindness during King Robert's visit to Winterfell, warning Joffrey's temper turned deadlier, perhaps planting doubt. Whether ravens would reach before battle unknown, but hope travels fast on feathered wings. Snow melted into sleet, sleet into cold mud. Tywin's host, now 100,000 with Tyrell spears swelling ranks, approached Maidenpool. Scouts reported lion tents stretching leagues. Robb ordered rivermen sabotage bridges behind them. Slow behemoth. Skirmishes erupted in abandoned hamlets. Stark bowmen firing from haylofts, setting wagons ablaze. Tyrell outriders responded with flame arrows, torching granaries, leaving charred husks. Small folk fled both lines, cursing all banners. War tasted of ash. On the eve of confrontation, Grey Wind slipped leash, vanished into woods. Robb hunted half the night. At dawn the direwolf returned limping, flank reopened. Around his neck clung black-fletched bolt. Snapped mid-shaft. Who had shot? None dared claim. Catelyn's protective fear turned near feral. She insisted Grey Wind remain inside, keep for coming battle. Robb refused. "He is part of me." They argued under rising sun, parted with anguish unsolved. Dawn of battle came like muted scream. Fog hugged River Valley, muffling hoofbeats. Robb arrayed men in 3 staggered crescents, longbowmen hidden along Cedar Draught Jot. Catelyn directed healers to Willow Grove repurposed for triage. She wore chainmail under wool for first time, weight foreign yet oddly comforting. Horns blared beyond mist. Lion banners emerged, trailing rose standards. Trumpets answered. Tywin at center, Loras Tyrell glittering emerald to right, Sir Kevan ranking foot behind. Drums pounded as phalanx advanced. Stark men waded knee-deep in mud, silent as graves. Arrows launched first volley, whistling doom. Tyrell shields overlapped, deflecting many. Others found gaps, men stumbled. Horn again, cavalry charge. Warhorses thundered into mud churn. Dizzy. Hidden pits collapsed, swallowing mounts. Screams melded with clash of steel as Robb signaled counter. Karstark pikes drove outward, Great Joan's axemen following. Fog lifted. Chaos tableau dado. Grey Wind barreled into front rank, jaws tearing gold-plated gorget. Robb Swung sword left then right, parrying mace blow that would have split helm. Loras Tyrell pressed flank with discipline. The famed knight of flowers, now a bringer of bramble. Thorn-edged flail cracked skulls. Catelyn rode along second line dispensing swift orders. Reinforce there. Send stretcher here. She saw Talisa kneeling beside a riverman, blood spurting rhythmic. Talisa's hands red to elbows as she clamped artery with scraps, face calm. Catelyn glimpsed love in action, and fear sharpened. For war punishes hearts. Midday sun pierced cloud just as Tywin committed reserves. A wedge of Clegane heavy knights, banners snapping. They hammered into Bolton contingent newly arrived from north. Bolton men parted with uncanny readiness, letting lions plunge deep, then closing behind. Some cheered cunning. Catelyn felt dread. Bolton pockets seldom closed for allies. Suddenly, a horn from rear. 2 blasts, raven note. Riders approached, flying flayed man banner but also lion pennons. Confusion rippled. Were these captives or allies? Then arrows hissed, Bolton shafts striking Stark backs. Betrayal unfurled crimson. Roose rode forward, voice chilling. The North remembers. But Roose chooses victors. His carbuncle red armor gleamed. Bolton and lion ranks merged, pressing Stark middle. Robb, seeing carnage, bellowed to rally but found himself isolated. Grey Wind cornered by pikes, bleeding heavily. Catelyn spurred through chaos towards her son. She ducked while a lion knight swung halberd, cleaving her horse's neck. She tumbled, breath jarred. Mud swallowed senses. When she rose, Robb stood atop small rise, sword dripping. Bolton's spearmen encircled. Tywin's banner edged nearer. Catelyn waded forward but crowd swelled between. Bolton raised voice. Lord Robb Stark, I bring you guest gift in thanks for hospitality at the Trident. 2 soldiers dragged a figure. Edmure, bruised but awake, sword at throat. Frey archers fanned out among Bolton lines. Tywin halted, watching with eyes calculating. Catelyn froze. Edmure mouthed, I am sorry, as tears streaked grime. Bolton called again. Yield crown, Lord Stark, and your uncle lives. Robb's knuckles whitened on hilt. Ghost of doubt wavered across features. Catelyn felt each second fall like axe. Greyjohn roared curse, charged. Arrows felled him mid-stride. Panic flickered. From far right wing came renewed horns. Not lion, not wolf, but piercing high call. Through ragged mist, a thin spearhead of men in mottled cloaks sprinted. Crannog outriders of reed, blades poisoned with swamp adder venom. Behind them rose banners of white harbor mermen. Manderley reinforcements returned from North Seas. They slammed into Bolton flank, chaos erupting. Jojen Reed, slight yet fierce, sprang toward Edmure's captors, dirk flashing. One soldier fell clutching neck. Edmure elbowed other, rolled free, seized, dropped sword. Battle tide shifted yet again. Tywin signaled horns. Lannister lines attempted retreat across mud, now littered with corpses. Bolton men, attacked from both sides, faltered. In melee Robb reached Bolton. Swords clashed. Bolton fought with surgeon precision, but Robb's fury drove harder. Grey Wind, despite gashes, sprung, locking jaws on Bolton's horse. Beast toppled. Bolton spilled. Robb's blade poised. Bolton smiled faint, whispered word lost in din. A Frey crossbow bolt struck Grey Wind's spine. Direwolf yelped, fell. Robb in shock swung late. Bolton rolled, stabbed Grey Wind mercy kill. Wolf's howl cut abrupt. Robb screamed savage. He thrust downward, sword piercing Bolton's collar, pinning him to mud. Blood bubbled pale pink. Bolton's eyes flickered then glazed. Catelyn reached them, clutching Robb's arm. Tears streaked mud on his cheeks. Around, battle still raged, but lion banners now in full withdrawal. Reed and Manderley pressed, but Tywin choreographed measured retreat, protecting core. As dusk deepened, horns ceased. Field belonged to wolves once more, though many lay silent. Catelyn knelt over Grey Wind. Robb sank beside, touching matted fur. He whispered, thanks, then closed the beast's amber eyes. Wind carried faint scent of pine resin from burning carts, and distant cries of wounded. Mother and son embraced, grief mingling. Night saw campfires flicker uncertain. Maesters tended hundreds. Talisa's hands shook, yet she refused rest. Edmure lived. Ribs cracked. He thanked Jojen with hoarse voice. Reeds vanished back to trees before dawn, leaving cryptic promise. The north yet pulses. Tywin's host fell back toward Harrenhal, wounded grievously but not slain. Loras Tyrell carried many dead roses. Yet victory soared among Stark men, a victory wrenched from treachery's jaws. Bards already strummed chords of wolf and merman, of reed ghosts in fog. But Catelyn counted costs. Grey Wind dead, Bolton's betrayal revealed, but shards remained. His bastard Ramsay still terrorized winter lands. Frey's remained allied with Lion. Robb's oath broken, and Frey vengeance fresh. She met Robb at Riverbank, where he built cairn over Grey Wind, each stone set with trembling hand. "I loved him," he whispered. She wrapped arms. "He loved you." Silence lingered, water rushing dark. At last she spoke. "Now you must be both man and wolf." He looked to east, where dawn's first blush touched sky. "We march," he said. "But not yet, at the Twins. First we retake Winterfell, bury our dead properly, rally new strength." She nodded. Home called. At White Harbor docks, Wyman Manderley loaded grain onto longships for northern relief. He greeted returning banners with tears, embraced sons. When ravens came telling of Bolton death and Frey perfidy, he swore oath of iron. The Manderleys would see Frey pies served at winter feast. Cooks sharpened cleavers. Far away on Dragonstone, Melisandre gazed into flames. Shadows writhed, forming image of a direwolf cloaked in snow, bleeding yet unbroken. Above it, a stag of shadow burned, piercing Lion. She smiled. "Azor Ahai arises in many guises," she told Stannis. He merely grunted, but his knuckles whitened on table's edge. The Red Woman whispered again. "Two kings, one realm. Fire must ally with ice to smother shadow." Stannis considered sending envoy north, an alliance once unimaginable. The twins lay silent, halls stinking of mildew and old blood. Lord Walder stroked new grandchild while counting coins Tywin sent. He did not know Manderley ships sailed south, disguised as trade barges, holds hiding ovens large enough for men. Nor did he know Arya Stark crept along riverbank, needle at hip, practicing silent footfalls. "Wolves gather," she whispered to River. It carried message to sea. Winter thickened. Catelyn rode with Robb toward ravaged north. Behind, banners streamed. Trout, merman, direwolf, pine, bear, serpent. Ahead, snowscape glistened. She felt ghosts of all lost but sensed new purpose forging. Grief into resolve. Betrayal into unity. On last night before crossing Neck, Robb summoned her to council. Maps spread beneath torch flare. He pointed at Moat Cailin, at Winterfell, at Dreadfort, at the Wall. "The north bleeds," he said, "but others bleed more. Wildlings mass beyond ice, the dead rumored walk. We fight lions and krakens, but after comes storm colder than any DWD. We must heal in time to face it." Catelyn shivered, though cloak thick. She pictured Bran, Rickon traveling unknown trails, Arya in wild, Sansa trapped. She rested hand on Robb's. "Then we reclaim our hearth, mend our pack, and face winter together." Stars burned above like distant fires of ancient kings. Somewhere beyond horizon, Tywin plotted. Cersei seethed. Frey's sharpened treachery. Dragons stirred in Far East. Yet beneath those stars, a mother and son shared resolve forged of snow and blood. Stronger than any sword. Riverlands lay behind, but story marched forward. Toward home, toward reckoning, toward the long night where wolves would prove, if they could still howl loud enough to wake the sleeping gods. Approx. 5,500 words.